Hi, my name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling. And in today's video is actually going to be a part two and a follow-up to the first part of the video that I did, which is asking the question, why do spiritually abusive people love cliches? It's an important video, so I will put the link to that video in the description box, because you're going to need to watch that one to really understand this one. But I'm going to do a brief summary. And basically, cliches are vague, and so spiritually abusive people tend to use them so to gain control over a situation. And the previous video talks about why. In this video, I want to focus more on strategy as to how to deal with this, right? So here's the first thing I'm going to suggest. Anytime you hear a cliche and you feel a little bit on the defensive, don't react and don't respond. You can just take a breath and you can say, well, that's something to think about. So I'm going to use the example about love, right? And this is something that's often weaponized against people, saying, oh, we should love one another. We should all love one another. And again, with these cliches, they have a bit of truth to them, right? Even what spiritually abusive people say, there's always that grain of truth that makes it much harder to, sometimes decipher, even defend yourself again. So in this situation, I do not condone arguing, right? Because that's just going to make you look bad. And it's when I say look bad, I mean, obviously we're probably going to look bad at sometimes, but it makes you actually lose the control, right? It puts you out of control. So don't argue, but instead ask questions and make statements. So here's some things you could say. Let's say that we hear this love one another thing and you're bringing up an offense, something that you have a problem with, either with the staff at this institution or that person. They say, oh, we should all should just love one another. You can say, love one another. Yeah, that's something to think about. You can just end it right there, right? And say that's something to think about. What that does is it kind of disarms that person, because what they're expecting is for you to now try and prove that you are a loving person. And if you prove that you're a loving person, even if you try to defend yourself, then it's going to put you in a position, or put them in a position to kind of like impose their belief on what that loving one another person thing should look like. Because after all, you don't want to look like an unloving person, right? So just say, that's something to think about. Something else that you could ask is, well, and you have to be, it's kind of a way to do this, because you're probably irritated and annoyed at this point, but you have to ask that question from a place of curiosity. Like, oh, okay, love one another. Okay, yeah, I think love is important. What exactly do you mean by love one another? Like, what exactly do you mean by that? And now it puts them in the position to explain what they mean, right? Um, and another thing you could do is you could ask, what does that mean? And how does that apply to this situation? Right. And again, you have to ask it in a certain way. I think it's just, you don't want to sound angry, but you could say, well, what does that mean? Maybe. And I'm curious as to how that applies in this situation. So practice whatever feels comfortable to you and do that. And at the same time, I also want you to think, when you hear that cliche, or if you think you're being given a cliche and you're not sure, or a platitude, think about, well, how does this address the issue at hand? Is this issue being addressed right now? Right. And you could even ask that. You could say, that's great. I do agree we should love one another, but I'm concerned that that's not really addressing the issue at hand right now, which is, and you could restate it, right? Something else you could do too is that you could ask them what they are suggesting based on this. So you could say, based on your sentiment that we should love one another, what do you suggest that we should do in this particular situation? And people who are spiritually abusive oftentimes don't like being held accountable, right? They have a very deep sense of insecurity. So sometimes they will use these cliches to throw you off, make you feel defensive, and then make themselves look like they're these enlightened beings and they're just above it all, unbothered, etc. So something you could ask is, well, what do you think we should do in this situation? I'd love to hear your suggestions, and make it as specific as possible. So they're like, oh, we just need to show love. We just have to remember to show love. Okay, well, what does that look like in the situation? Because I'm not sure I follow. You could even play dumb a little bit. Oh, yeah, I mean, we all know we should love each other, but what would that look like here? So you want to ask for application and make sure that you hold their feet to the fire as much as you can. Or if they say something, you say, oh, are you suggesting that, that because we love one another, we should allow somebody who most of us don't feel most of us feel uncomfortable with, right? We should allow them, to come to this institution or whatever it is, right? Or, I know we should love one another, but are you saying that I should go back to that person who's abusive and continue to be abused? Is that what you're saying? And you could ask them that point blank, right? And then see how they respond. And I'm sure they probably won't, just as you don't want to look bad, they don't want to look bad either. So they may say, oh, no, it's not that. And then give another cliche about, oh, we're all, no one's perfect, blah, 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 blah. And then you could say, well, what do you think I should do in this situation? What do you suggest? Because they'll probably say, oh, can't tell you what to do or what I think. It's not relevant. What do you suggest that I do? So those are some ways that you can deal with these types of challenges, and something you could just do too is just not even engage. You could just say that's something to think about, end the meeting early, I actually have to go, whatever you need to do, and just leave it at that. Whatever you do though, I'm just going to remind you again, don't get in any arguments, number one. Number two, ask for specifics. Ask yourself, think about, okay, how does this relate to the issue right at hand right now? And ask them to either explain, to clarify, or to hold their feet to the fire and ask what they think should be done in this situation, or have them explain what it means, even if it's not something where they're giving advice. Just help me explain what that means and how this relates. And then another thing you really want to do that I would recommend is journal about it, right? And that just helps you. I've talked about how to recover from gaslighting in a lot of my videos. And so in these situations, when you feel like someone on the other end is trying to change your perception of reality or have you even doubt it, you journal. And what that does, it tells you, hey, this is what I said. I said this and these things happened. This is what they said. This is what, the cliche that they used or whatever it is that they said. And I also left the conversation with no practical ways to address the problem, right? And so writing these things down, even if you don't want to write it down, you just want to record yourself, do that. And hopefully that will help. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. How have you dealt with spiritually abusive people who love to use cliches? Have you come up with any responses that could help others? How have you dealt with that? All right, because again, using those cliches is another form of gaslighting. And so you have to really be careful, or it can be depending on how it's used. Okay, so I hope that helps. I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe and comment down below. All right, have a wonderful day that's filled with peace. Bye-bye.